The letter said my mailbox violated community standards, slapped a $500 fine on it, and gave me 72 hours to pay, like my beige little box was threatening national security. The HOA president smiled like she owned the zip code, and when she called the cops to force compliance, I thought we were absolutely done for. Then the officer showed up, took one look at my wife, and called her judge. I know rewind, right? Let me start where it actually began, because the way Tuesday detonated didn't make sense until the last 5 minutes. It kicks off with Christina, our HOA president, rolling up in a Honda Civic that sounded like a blender full of gravel. She had a laminated clipboard fake pearls and a handwritten official business sign taped to the door crayon. I swear. She marched up like royalty, told me our roses were 6 inches over regulation height, regulation according to whom, and declared our completely normal mailbox illegal. She read off fees like a game show host: $2,000 for landscaping, $1,000 for the mailbox, $500 for processing, and I'm trying to compute how a piece of paper can cost more than our microwave. My wife, Alicia, just listened, calm, polite, zero. Panic asked which bylaw covers, mailbox specs, what the appeals process is, normal stuff if you're a law professor and not a person who just got ambushed on a Tuesday. Christina handed us the violation. Alicia thanked her like she'd just found pasta sauce in aisle 7. I'm sweating, she's serene. It was like watching a cat in a thunderstorm, purring. I fished the letter out of the trash. Yes, out of the trash, because Alicia folded it, smiled, and tossed it without blinking. I'm waving it like a red flag. Honey, foreclosure. I say like maybe the word itself will do CPR on her sense of urgency. She just says, I know what it says, and puts it back in the can. I barely slept. Google at 2:30 a.m. Can an HOA legally take your house reading horror forums until my eyes burned. She woke up at 6, did yoga, and made coffee. I'm calculating how many plasma donations equal $8,000. She's adjusting warrior pose like we don't live inside a stress volcano. 3 days later, Christina returned with escalated fees. Apparently, theater gets a sequel. Late penalties. Attorney consultation. Lien preparation. Every item delivered with a dramatic pause like she expected a soundtrack. The total ballooned to $8,000, and I swear she tried not to grin when she said the number. Alicia invited her in for coffee and cookies. Cookies. For the woman trying to invoice us into oblivion. I stood behind my wife, waiting, begging for the big reaction. Lawsuits, screaming, something. Instead, Alicia asked, which municipal authority grants jurisdiction for these fees? What's the due process requirement for a lien in this state? It was surgical. My wife's questions didn't argue, they exposed. Christina stalled, repeated phrases like standard procedure, squinted at her clipboard like it could talk. By the time she left, Alicia had documented every word. That night I caught my wife in the office, laptop glow on her face, taking notes like she was cramming for finals. When I asked what she was reading, she shut the lid. Just being thorough, but not. Before I saw phrases I did not expect in a suburban nightmare about roses. Title 18 USC, Wire Fraud, Interstate Commerce Violations, Prosecution Guidelines. I found a notepad by the coffee maker with chocolate chip baked times, right next to section numbers from federal criminal statutes. Baking and felonies bullet-pointed like a grocery list. I started to wonder who exactly I'd been married to for 15 years, and why I'd only ever seen her courtroom voice when she was arguing with me about where the Tupperware lids go. The next afternoon, a guy named Morrison arrived, dressed like security, built like a refrigerator with opinions. Christina had warned she'd bring professional backup. He did the intimidation walk, the cross-armed stance, the steady gaze that says, "Where's your checkbook?" Alicia offers iced tea with lemon. He gives the talk, leans, foreclosure consequences. She listens, nods, then asks for his badge number and agency affiliation, plus the written oversight policy for appeals. The man actually sweated through his collar. I watched him deflate inch by inch. You know that feeling when your brain recalibrates? Oh, we're not prey here. We're the trap. Still, I was spiraling. By evening, the neighbors were gathering in little knots on the sidewalk, some rooting for Christina, some just looking for a show. The rumors multiplied like rabbits' fines, defiance, arrogance. Christina strutted around in a rhinestone blazer that could guide planes to safety in fog, practicing her victory speech. Every time I looked out the window, there were more utility trucks, cable electric water parked just so around the cul-de-sac. I thought it was weird then. I thought I was paranoid. Then I thought maybe I was paranoid about being paranoid. That's when I hit bottom. I went upstairs, sat on the edge of the bed, and stared at the floor. I hated the sound of my own thoughts. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe paying would make it stop. Maybe this wasn't the hill to die on. I felt small, ridiculous, like the kind of guy who lets a laminated clipboard tell him how to live. There's this specific kind of helplessness. It's not loud. It's quiet, like a fog that wraps your brain. I wanted to give in, to buy my way out of fear, to be done. Then I remembered Alicia's face when Christina first read the fees out loud. Not smug, not angry, analytical, like she wasn't ignoring danger, she was mapping it. And those trucks parked waiting, never working. There's a difference between coincidence and coordination. I stood up. By morning, the cul-de-sac looked like a stage. Lawn chairs on driveways, phones out. Mrs. Patterson ready to live stream the takedown of the entitled neighbor who thinks she's above the rules. Christina rehearsed her finger pointing. Morrison tried to stand like he wasn't worried about the iced tea lady. I found Alicia laying out a blouse like she had brunch reservations. They called the real police, I said, voice shaking. She smiled, almost kind. I know. Officer Rodriguez arrived with that seasoned cop calm, the kind that says, "My day is fence heights and barking dogs." He listened to Christina's monologue, violations, late fees. The whole novella, took notes, nodded, like a math teacher patiently grading a very loud quiz. Then he turned to my wife for her version. Alicia didn't whine or accuse. She explained jurisdiction, due process, board authorization, appeals path. Her language got precise, then more precise. Rodriguez's pen slowed, then stopped. His eyes flicked from Alicia to his badge, back again, like his internal Rolodex just hit red tape. He swallowed. "And then the moment," he said, voice cracking. "Wait, are you? Judge Turner Williams?" Federal Judge Turner Williams. The words hung there, heavy, impossible, true. Christina's smirk evaporated like someone had opened a vacuum. Mrs. Patterson's phone clattered to the sidewalk. Morrison turned the color of notebook paper. I felt my knees go light. The officer stepped back just enough to make space, like the air itself needed a lane. Everything that hadn't made sense snapped into focus. Those utility trucks. Not a coincidence. Doors opened. Agents stepped out with badges I'd only ever seen in movies. Cable repair became the FBI. Electrical maintenance turned into a quiet SWAT of clipboards and warrants. It was like watching a magic trick in reverse. Nothing appeared. Cover vanished. Christina sputtered. "She's unemployed. She bakes casseroles," and our neighbors suddenly looked like extra credit students who realized the pop quiz was on ethics, not gossip. The agents had receipts, actual receipts, and the kind you don't want your name on. A warrant team peeled off toward Christina's place. Another group flanked Morrison. I could see it break in his eyes the moment he understood impersonating authority while threatening a federal judge is not a parking ticket. Christina went through the 5 stages of grief in 30 seconds flat. Denial. This is a mistake. Anger. I was doing my elected job, bargaining. Property values, collapse, silence. The rhinestones on her blazer caught the sun as they cuffed her. The sparkle felt like the world's most sarcastic spotlight. Rodriguez, God bless him, switched to formal mode, radioing supervisors and federal liaison paperwork fluttering at his feet. He looked at Alicia with a new gravity, like he was remembering every training module he'd ever taken on protocol and hierarchy. My wife nodded steady as a metronome and led the way into our living room like she was seating relatives at Thanksgiving. Except the relatives were federal prosecutors. Except the centerpiece was a binder she'd built quietly from day one, photos of fake documents, recorded threats, timestamps cross-referenced calls. I thought she was doom-scrolling at midnight. She was laying out a case file. Turns out Christina's clipboard theater wasn't just a neighborhood shakedown. It was a multi-state racket, fabricated standards, inflated fees, made-up deadlines, threats of liens, and a nice, tidy funnel of cash to the enforcement fund. 47 families across 3 states, over $200,000, skimmed always the same script. Fear, hurry, pay, now. Morrison's role: intimidation and collections with a side of pretending to be connected to law enforcement. He was good at making people feel small, not so good at explaining his badge number when someone asked with the exact right calm. Neighbors drifted from smug to stunned to suddenly supportive in record time. Live stream chats exploded. HOA Karen gets federal justice comment counts spiking like a crypto scam. I should have felt vindicated. I just felt quiet. The story was never really about our mailbox or the roses or a board that forgot what community meant. It was about power, and who gets to use it, and who stands there calm, prepared, relentless when people try to wield fear like a weapon. The last thing Christina said before they put her in the car was this small, flat human thing. I didn't know who she was. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Because the truth is, you don't need to know who somebody is to treat them lawfully. That's the point. And the final click of the handcuffs sounded like a punctuation mark at the end of a sentence she'd been writing one neighbor at a time. We didn't celebrate. There were no hugs in the driveway. The agents finished the inventory. Rodriguez collected statements. The trucks, now undeniably not trucks, rolled away. Alicia made coffee the way she always does and slid a mug across the counter like this was just Tuesday after all. I stared at her for a long time. Not because she's a judge, not really. Because when I wanted to pay to make fear go away, she held her line. Because when I thought the fight wasn't worth it, she showed me it was never about winning a fight. It was about refusing to be bullied off your own front porch. I asked her softly why she didn't tell me. She said, "You didn't need the title. You needed the truth." Then she put the kettle away like we weren't standing in the afterimage of a sting operation. And that's the story, I guess. Not the one Christina rehearsed, not the one the neighbors tuned in for, definitely not the one the clipboard promised. The story is a fake crisis about color swatches and shrub heights turned real the second someone decided intimidation counts as authority. It doesn't. It never did. We just forget sometimes. In the end, there was no cheering in our kitchen, no victory lap, no celebratory pancakes. Just silence, sunlight, and the strange relief of knowing the world can still snap back into shape if someone somewhere insists on the edges being straight. Lesson calm isn't surrender sometimes, it's the sharpest blade you've got.